especially in the future, because the youth is the future. We are the future,
Yeah.
and if we are seeing things and we have a vision, we're praying about it at the same time, we're working hard towards it. So it should be a joint effort so that people can feel comfortable throughout the whole process.
All right. Now, for businesses, I think as this bill goes to the National Assembly and then we see a possible passage of this bill and then it becomes law, I think businesses, those who employ, we call them the organized private sector, the employers of labor, we should see that, of course, going to mean that there's going to be they'll have to review the budget of, their, what do you call it now, the salary payroll. Yeah. They'll have to adjust payroll so that it can accommodate this if it becomes law. So that budgetary adjustment, let's see how that affects the current situation of things, because we know that some businesses are struggling. Some businesses are struggling. They are managing to keep head above the water. So yes, they are big companies, they are big conglomerates, but they are not really able to do what's so I look forward to seeing how they navigate this one, because we do not know what it is. Like I said, the figures are not out there yet. We'll find out in coming weeks. But then again, it means that they have to get set, because one thing is certain, there's been an increase, and 30,000, which is the current minimum wage, is no longer acceptable. And then, of course, for businesses as well, the pressure to match or exceed the minimum wage and attract or retain talent, that's HRs understand what I'm saying at this point, because there's going to be that back and forth again before you can now know somehow to start competing, whether this competition, maybe your competition within that sector pays more or not. That can also come in, especially in the private sector. For civil servants, they have to hold their governors to pay them. Whereas for state civil servants, they hold governors to pay them, and some governors have said they cannot pay actually. But that's a story for another day. Now let's look at the next story. Looking at the electricity. I don't know if you followed the news. Well, recently, the bills that we pay for electricity have just been segmented, and we have these people we call band A. Then I have band A, band B, band C, band D. Band A are the people that are supposed to have power supply for up to 20 hours a day. Okay, 20 hours a day. Now, whether or not they're getting up to 20 hours, I cannot say. I do not know. But it's there's a current situation where the cost of their bill was increased. Okay, and while the labor again, one of the demands they are making is that this should be reversed. While we are on all of that, band A tariff, that's what it's called. While we are trying to sort that out, the regulatory body that oversees the distribution companies in Nigeria, they'll call it the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission. They just approved that here in Port Harcourt, that the distribution company can increase the band A customers categorized as maximum demand 2 special. We call them AMD2 special. Okay, they said that these are customers that have a load of 445 kVA. And from the description, these people are mostly they are looking to me that they are mostly manufacturers and business areas, not even like where people live. But I mean, I could be wrong. I'm not sure of that. But they said the MD customers are customers that have a load of 45 kVA and above, and they operate and maintain their dedicated transformers. These people handle their own things themselves. So currently they pay about 206 naira per kilowatt hour, and now the regulatory body just increased it and approved that the Port Harcourt distribution company can now increase it so that these people can now pay 225 naira per kilowatt hour. That's the conversation right now. And I must tell you honestly, I've spoken with some of these people the very first time the story broke about increasing tariff for band A customers, like they call them. We spoke to a couple of them and they said they don't even see the 20-hour lights like that too. And then it's going to affect them because most of them are businesses, really. Most of them are people who rely on electricity heavily for the business that they do. So having to increase the electricity for them, it's not, the mass is not adding. What do you think, Favor?
Yeah, I like what you said at the end right now too. The math is not really mathing because it's like, okay, what are we actually, what is the value, what is the current? When you think about current, every it's like power channels. Like if you're increasing the value of the power, then the power has to increase its value based on where it's going, based on the capacity it's within. Some homes are not the same, not all homes are the same, so they're going to have different bills. But if it's now getting to a position where it's like it has to go through this type of format, then it might strike a nerve, for some people.
Yes.
But
And we started
the
seeing
way
this
I'm
customer segmentation. We started seeing it this year. Before now, we didn't. It wasn't really a very common. Maybe they did it within that sector and did it for themselves, but they made it public this year, where they said, "Oh, is it last year? Let me just say recently." I think it was like when the former increase was done. That was when it was done, and then we start hearing band A, band B. Before now, what we hear is federal lights, state lights. I don't know that there's local government lights, but that used to be the norm. But now it appears federal light people are the people that are in, I think, band A and band B. Anyways, the conversation is still on, and one thing is clear, that if they approved it for Port Harcourt Disco, like we call them, it could also mean that the let's say the ones in Enugu, Eko, Abuja, perhaps they could also get something like this. And maybe that's also another way we're going to just see an increase across board for this new customer segments that they are doing. And whatever it is, we see that everyone is trying to make sure that their operational and maintenance costs, that's the discos now, they're trying to make sure that the operational and maintenance costs, they are able to cover it. Because I recall severally how they've talked about the expenses that they bear when it comes to trying to get the job done. So whatever it is, we're going to obviously keep an eye on this one. And I also say that business owners, we need to keep an eye on this one, professionals as well in these industries, because I mean, a backlash is going to come from these customers again, or definitely. But let me not be a prophet of doom. Let me just assume it's something that needed to be done, okay? Because no one wants to pay higher for electricity. Everyone already thinks it's high, so to pay more, I don't know. I do not think the people under this would take it sitting down. Let me just see that. So let's see how that goes. Anyways, businesses operating in Port Harcourt, especially those classified as these MD2 special customers, well, if it's not working for you, maybe it's time to reassess energy patterns and use other alternatives that apart from this one. Anyways, let's go to the third story now. The next story here on Market Watch talks about something that you may be familiar with, talking about airlines, foreign airlines. There's actually a price war going on right now, Favor. According to this report on Business Day newspaper, they said competition on the popular Lagos-London route has intensified.
Port Harcourt, it's time for the big
Nigeria Info. We had to go on that break. And so much to talk about. We're still on Market Watch actually, and I was talking about the foreign airlines. I still have my guest, the podcast trainers, joined me from the US, Houston, Texas to be precise, and we're looking through the Market Watch before we get to the topic of the day. And we're just finishing up the Market Watch segment, and we're about to look at the third story on this segment. And I was talking about the foreign airlines and how there's been a price war, as they call it, on the Lagos London route. Of course, we know, if you follow the news. Favor, you're there, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So if you followed the news, you would notice that the Air Peace, a Nigerian airline company, recently started going through the Lagos London route, created that route, and as a Nigerian carrier, they slashed the price, and that has seen foreign airlines also slash their price, and that continues to happen. And then now there is a price war. Everyone is some are even going lower than Air Peace currently, and that's good riddance, some people have called it. What would you call it?
Wow. I feel like right now, the way airlines are, because I've also been watching the news, just travel news, because I love to travel too. And what I see is across every airline, this thing is happening across, both internationally, nationally, locally. And it's coming to a point where now, you know how you say the customer is always right, or the customer is first? That's what's happening now, because it's like the airlines, with this pricing, it's like, what are we paying for? Are we paying for the seat? Are we paying for the customer service? Are we paying for the service, the bag? So now it's getting to the point where, if I'm looking at it from a hindsight, it's now creating an avenue for people to think a little bit outside the box now. And the way things are even going, and especially with AI involved too, because I'm sure there's a component, in the secondary sector that may be affecting this in a way. It may not be, set out, but it could possibly be something that is, in between that, because of all the charges that are happening, how people, you think about staff as well that are, being laid off. Some people, so there's a lot going on at the same time. So with all these moving parts, there's definitely something that is like you said, it's better to not have something like that than have it in the first place.
Okay. Well, I think it's a good time for business owners who travel a lot, because it means that their budget can accommodate all of this. So you can just keep checking the competition. The competition is playing in the favor of customers, like you said. I will definitely keep an eye on that one. And that's it on Market Watch. It's time for Insider Tips. And like I said, we're talking business of podcasting. But first, I want to thank you, Favor, for doing Market Watch with me, because I know you're not a business analyst, but you did a good job. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so now time to talk your forte, the business of podcasting. How long have you done podcasting now?
Podcasting for me it's going to be 5 years this year.
Interesting.
Actually, today is June 12th, so August 12th this year will be 5 years.
Wow. So how long have you been training others to do podcasting?
I've been training others to do podcasting within the last 2 years.
Okay.
And because I wanted to first do it for myself before I could do it for someone. So So podcasts are everywhere these days, but how can they really help your hustle grow? That's the question. We are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Yeah, YouTube and Facebook at Nigeria Info PH. And yes, I would love to hear what you think. It's a public holiday, so it's a good time to sit and talk about areas that you can leverage as a business owner or even a professional to either grow your personal brand or your business brand. So let's hear your thoughts. If you have questions, Favor is also open to answering questions. And you can also share your thoughts on X at Nigeria Info PH. And then on WhatsApp, the WhatsApp number 0809 030 6416 0809 030 6416. That's the number for you to send your messages on WhatsApp. The phone lines will be open shortly, but first, let's get right to the very nitty-gritty of this interesting conversation. And now, I said that we've seen a surge in Nigerian podcasts recently, and I'm wondering what factors are driving this growth. Can you tell us this, Favor? Yes. What I would say this: the first factor that's affecting this growth is that there's a surge of artificial intelligence going on. So everybody's looking for this human connection. Everyone's looking for a way to connect with other people and listen to other stories from people. And as people are going out of their way to do things, they want to do things while listening to things actively or passively. So when you are thinking about connecting with people, you're using different ways of connecting. So podcasting right now is the best way to connect with your customer, because I also tell my students, I tell my clients, and we've been doing this business. This is just a vertical for 5 years, but the business has been running for 10 years. And I've seen a denominator that's common across all industries, and it's consistency. Because if you're consistent and you're diligent in what you're doing, then you'll be able to see how you can find your audience by just using your voice. And most people don't know how to get their podcast out because there's so many people. How do you start is by looking around you and asking the people around you, if I was talking to you right now, what would you like
let's
to do?
before we get to that, let's look at the opportunities. I mean, the Nigerian market caught the bug really late. I must be honest with you, because podcasts have been going on before now, and now it's everywhere in Nigeria. What are the opportunities for the Nigerian market? What opportunities exist? The question I was going to ask you next, talking about monetizing podcasts, because staying with the figure that you listed earlier, only 13% out of the figure that you quoted earlier are able to stay active. And does that mean it's really something that you can scale? Can you really monetize podcasts and scale? Walk us through that.
Oh yes, you can definitely scale your podcast, because if you have a business, let's give an example of a place. Let's say food. Let's say a restaurant that has food. They're selling food, right? People are going to be going out to eat food. If you have a podcast and somebody is hired in your frequently ask questions about this restaurant, and then all those questions are asked, people put it on Twitter or X, people pick all the information, they answer that information in a podcast back to social media to now answer those questions in form of a podcast. That way you're able to increase your listenership, you can increase your connections with people, and ultimately even get contacts. Because when people create podcasts, they just say, okay, my podcast is on YouTube, it's on SoundCloud, it's on Apple, it's on Spotify, and they leave it there because they think that's how it's going to grow. How it's going to scale is if you have your own website, then you can monetize your podcast, because you can actually create real estate on your website. I always tell people, I treat websites like land. It's property. It's a domain. If you're buying that domain every year, it means you're protecting your domain. You're protecting your property. So if you're protecting your intellectual property, how do you multiply that protection? By increasing the asset value within that intellectual property asset. So you're creating podcasts by creating website links that live on the web, that have answers to questions people are asking frequently on a daily basis about your business. So the
interesting
500, 10 to 25 is going to be quite hard for you to do. And so if you decide to say, I'm going to find 100 questions about my business, and I answer those 100 questions accurately within a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Podcast has no limits. You can talk as long as you want on a show. You can splice it up as many times as you want. So if you answer 100 questions about your business, and like search.com, so if you go to you.com, not youtube.com, you.com, you go there, and that's an AI search engine. So your website has to be also on that search engine too, because it's powered by Microsoft. So if you have 100 questions, and those 100 are formed, and those forms are within those websites, then you will always win for years on by, and you will never have to spend money again on your business, because you've been able to answer a question authentically through a podcast.
Let's talk about the value chain, because not everyone can talk. I mean, like I said, everyone is getting microphones, and maybe your figure earlier, I'm really focusing on that, and as you're talking, I'm seeing why some people are not able to see this through. So they start and then they're not able to see it through. Okay, so let's talk about the value chain. Is it possible that people can just focus on the value chain, whether it's the marketing, people's podcast, or not just necessarily that you're producing it? Tell me about the value chain within this sector.
Within this sector, I believe that the major key factor for every podcast host or guest is to drive a message and make the message clear. So if you have a business, and let's say I don't have time to talk about podcasts, this is not my lane, I'm not interested, at least go on a show, at least be a guest, go somewhere. I'm so grateful to be on this show with you. It's a blessing, and I really thank you so much for this opportunity. You know, I'm challenging the next person to go on a podcast, to go do the same thing I'm doing. So as you're actively listening to me or passively listening to me, to go ask somebody on Instagram, hey, I want to be on your show, I want to talk about my business, can I come in? Before you know it,
podcast host or guest, I know that the editing part is also very, very crucial for people to have the editing skill, the marketing skill, distribution platforms. Some do not have it. And so would you advise people, let's say businesses, to outsource these things and perhaps, you know, allow the value chain within the podcasting industry to expand, and not just everyone trying to get a microphone?
Right now, this might shock a lot of people. You don't need a microphone to do a podcast.
What do you now need?
You just need your laptop and a speaker, because if you go to riverside.fm, that is a website where you can set up an account for free and record your podcast, whether audio or video, and then you can take that into the podcast and set it up for Apple, Spotify, and other platforms. So when people are thinking about podcasts, the first thing someone thinks about is budget. If you have a budget, I would not put that budget into hardware. I would put that budget into marketing, and then use Riverside to leverage your audio, because they have high quality audio. They have a good inbuilt sound card. If you have a microphone and you're already doing it, even better for you. If you're already in the content creation industry and you have, like for me, I use Adobe, so I already have that product, so I can use that. If you have Audacity, you can use that too. It's a free platform. So you don't need a microphone. You can use one to make sure that you have quality, because if you want to start doing video, you want to start being in a room, you want to start thinking about your quality of your video camera. Some people like to do that, you know. But if you want to start, some people don't want to think about all those things. So just to do that first baby step is to start off with that platform. And then as you grow, you can now start getting sponsors, and start getting money for your show, start promoting your own products, promote your own website, promote your own blog, promote your own Instagram. Hey, check me out on this platform, talk about it. Because the more you talk about it on your platform, those words that you say on a podcast turn into text, and that text is transcribed into the search algorithm, which is where people search on Google and Bing. So if you use your words wisely and you've done your keyword research, then how you speak on your podcast can really bring a lot of people your way, because you've tagged them through the keywords that you've pronounced.
This is very interesting. Now, I'm getting to the part where a lot of people think that podcasting replaces broadcasting. Anyways, we'll get to that. But first, let's open the phone lines and hear what the tea is that the questions could be. If you have questions, if you have comments, we're talking business of podcasting. I don't know about you, but whenever I open my phone and if I get to the fifth slide, I would see that someone has a couch and a microphone, and this has gone on for a while, and it's spread across, and more people are embracing podcasts. And so I said, why not talk about this on Talking Figures, and let's understand what it is, the business of podcasting. How can businesses leverage it and scale? And we have a podcast trainer who's been talking to us about the possibilities that lie within that industry. And so if you have questions, yes, it's time to for you to ask them. You can call 0817 923 0002. You can also call 0817 923 0003. The WhatsApp number 0809 030 6416. That's where you can send me a message on WhatsApp. Send me a WhatsApp message on 0809 030 6416. Okay, if you have questions about podcasting, how you can take advantage of it. I like that you were able to mention a favor. You mentioned all of the different sectors that can leverage it, but I will still ask you further, so you'd expand that, and let's see, because most times it's like those days we're in secondary school, and once you cannot dance, sing, or what was that third one again? Is it draw? So it's almost like you're useless. But there are other talents, and so we'll talk about it in a bit as well. what other sectors, the not so popular sectors that can also leverage podcasting, and the ones that shouldn't even bother. All right. So yes, you can also send your messages. We're live on Facebook and YouTube at Nigeria Info PH. If you have questions, if you have comments, I would like to see them. I have a question here. You didn't put your name. It says, "Good day. My question is about the podcast. I'm a dentist looking to start a podcast on dental health education. What advice do you have for me? What platform would you advise me to use? Thank you." Favor, you're going to answer that in a bit, but I have a call coming in, and we'll take the call and then we'll answer that. So perhaps you could take that down, and then we'll answer it after we'll take this call. Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, you're welcome to Talking Figures on 92.3 Nigeria Info.
So how can I take advantage of broadcasting?
Okay. You mean podcasting, P-O-D, not broadcasting. You mean we're talking about podcasting, not broadcasting, but I just want to be sure the one you mean. You mean P-O-D, right? Podcasting.
Yes.
Okay. So, Favor, you can hear her, right?
No, I didn't hear the question.
Okay, the question is, how can she take advantage of podcasting? What do you do? Let's start with that. You didn't tell me your name. Are you there?
Who, me?
Yes.
No. Yes, what's your name?
Destiny.
Destiny, what do you do? What do you do at the moment? Are you a student? What do you do at the moment?
I'm a student.
Okay, great. So how can students take advantage of podcasting? Favor.
Oh, that's a very good question.
So just keep it, and then we'll take more calls so that we can have more people calling as much as possible and maximize the time. All right, thank you, Favor, our caller. Thank you for reaching out, and I'll take this other one. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, you're welcome to Talking Figures.
I really enjoy your program.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to get the man's number on the podcast we are talking about.
His number?
Yes, so that I can make contact with him, please.
Okay, I think you should listen to the end of the show then.
All right, thank you.
All right.
All right.
Okay, so yes, 0817-923-0007 is also another number that you can call, and there's also 0817-923-0009, another number that you can call if you have questions about podcasting. I have a podcast trainer who's been talking to us about the opportunities. By the time he broke down the opportunities, it just blew my mind. That means we've been sitting on what do you call that again? Is it money? And we didn't even know. And we know how, because you cannot afford the best microphone around, you think it's not for you. But he's saying that you don't even need a microphone to start, and that's very profound for me. Anyways, let's get to you now, Favor. Perhaps you could start with the one about the dentist, and then we'll get to the student.
Yes, we need more dentist podcasts out there. Because there's a website called ivy.fm is another platform you can check. I'm really giving you tools so that you can also do your research and take action, because after this call, I know you want to really know how to do a podcast. This is the time to start in this 2024, especially in the middle of the year. When I look at the word dentist in ivy.fm, there are 16,295 episodes and 5,410 podcasts talking about dental care. And these are dentist podcasts. So, and in the description it says healthcare occupations caring for the mouth and teeth.
But now there's a peculiarity for Nigeria. The Nigerian dental health what do you call it, dental health care education is going to be different from the one that is where you are right now, isn't it?
No, this is not even a US, this is a global chart.
Okay.
I'm looking at a global chart right now. So when I'm looking at the global chart, because podcast is global.
Okay, so it's also important that you create content that is global. Can you hold that thought while we take this call? Because of we have Victor from Mile 3 calling now. Hello, Victor.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Welcome to Talking Figures 92.3 Nigeria Info.
Thank you. I've actually wanted to go into this podcast, but I want to put a question to your guest. For me, how do you pick out area of interest? Because I believe if you speak on something that is of most interest to you, that will be a strong point for you to excel. So, for someone who is having this dilemma of a particular topic, of course, taking into consideration the environment they find themselves, how do you pick out your best choice of interest to speak on in order to capture your audience?
Favor, did you hear that question?
No.
Why are you not hearing these questions? Anyways, the caller Victor from Mile 3 is asking, how do you pick the what to talk about on your podcast, considering your environment?
Let me put it that way.
Sorry, say that again.
Okay.
I said I'm a biochemist. So
okay, he's a biochemist, and he's wondering how would he decide on what to talk about, considering that, like what I was trying to say before I took the call, the environment. But you're saying is global. But let's he's taking note of that. He's going to respond to you. Thank you, Victor, for calling.
Thank you so much.
All right. Okay, so that's like the third question, and we have less than 5 minutes for you to answer. So go on.
Okay, so I'll kick off with the biochemist question, and then I'll go to the dentist, and I'll finish off with school. So with the biochemistry, use google.com and also use listennotes.com, listen notes with 2 N's. When you go in there, type in biochemistry, and there's a method I want you to use. Use the ABC method. So if it's biochemistry, you do biochemistry A, then you see all the attributes that you see online in the search box. Biochemistry B, so you might see biochemistry A standing for, acronyms, this and that, that's content. Then biochemistry B, basics, before and after. You can use that as metrics. So use your seed keyword and plant your seed, and then create fruits from that seed by creating content out of that ABC method. Then for dentists, you can have a podcast, talking about, how to take care of yourself and how to connect, with your customers. How do you build your customers from a closed niche? And how you can do that is by name tagging, because this is an SEO tactic, name tagging. So if let's say I'm in Port Harcourt and I want people to find me because I'm the #1 dental care, support center in Port Harcourt. If I'm having a podcast, the word Port Harcourt needs to be in my podcast title, my podcast description, my podcast tag, because when somebody is searching for dental care, whenever people are searching these days with their mobile phones, their locations are turned on. So if you have a podcast and your location and you have content describing your location in text format on a podcast, it means that you're literally compounding your podcast to the power of like 10, meaning that if you have one podcast episode and it's showing up on 10 different platforms, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Listen Notes, you name all those platforms have your link to your website, to your Google profile, to your email. So if somebody sees that online from any angle, they can still access you. And then for schools, how do you use productivity on podcasts? The best way to do that is by going and still using the ABC method wherever you're checking. And when you're using podcasts, listen to conversations that they're having. So let's say, and let me just say this really quickly, podcasting is a trending industry, if that makes sense, because people on podcasts are talking about what's trending. So if you know what's trending in biochemistry, if you know what's trending in the dentistry, in the dentist world, if you know what's trending in school, if you hear what's happening in your area, talk about it.
We have to go now, Favor. How can we find you on social media very quickly?
Yes, how you can find me is go to wedon'tplaypodcast.com. wedon'tplaypodcast.com. Put your contact information there when you see the pop-up, and you'll be getting emails from me and my team so that you can connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn at Favor Obasi Ike, and you can be able to work with me. If you have any questions, I can be able to get in touch with you, and I'll give you my digital business card when you get my email.
Thank you so much, Favor, for making time to be on Talking Figures. That's a much we can take. I'm sure the questions are really quite numerous. Anyways, the conversation can continue online. If you have questions, you can actually go on at Nigeria Info PH on all of our platforms and drop your questions there on Facebook, YouTube, or either of them. And the guests can actually still, answer those questions. All right. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. Thank you, Favor, and do have a lovely one. All right.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so that's it on Talking Figures today. Up next is Rivers Today. That's the news. And after that, Kalada will be here for Hard Facts. And until then, have a lovely one. My name is Choma Ezewanfo. See you next week.